Meet Ochiai-san. A recently divorced young woman, she lives a pretty sad life by herself after being left heartbroken and alone by her ex-husband. She's recently moved into the apartment next to this guy, Sawatari-kun. Ochiai is a pretty average neighbor. Sometimes she cries so loudly, Sawatori can hear her sobbing through the walls. But otherwise, she seems nice enough. One time coming home late after work, Sawatari spots Ochiai being hounded by some creep on the side of the road. Out of instinct, he rushes to save her, beating the guy away with his backpack. Take note, boys, this is what modern chivalry looks like. Ochiai thanks her neighbor for saving her, but she's so embarrassed that she couldn't handle it by herself that she starts to cry and runs away. Although she doesn't forget the favor Sawatari did her. When she sees him coming home on the weekend, she offers him a gift as thanks. The two of them get to talking, and Sawatari reveals that the creepy guy hitting on Ochiai was actually a big-name client of his company, so he got suspended for beating him up. Ochiai is horrified because she feels responsible. She asks if there's anything she can do to make it up to him. Sawatari tells her he's been sent a load of veggies and food by his granny back home, but since he can't really cook, they're kinda useless to him. So, Ochiai whips up a delicious meal using the ingredients, and seeing how much Sawatari likes it, she offers to make food for him more often. What a perfect setup that definitely won't become a romance somewhere down the line. Sawatori's gratitude gets Ochiai all flustered, since she hasn't been treated so nicely in a while and forgot what it was like to be complimented. But when she returns to her own apartment, she starts overthinking their encounter. She's worried that she misread the situation and that Sawatari might just have felt sorry for her and not actually wanted her company or her cooking. Clearly, Ochiai's divorce has left her with an insecurity that people will always find her annoying and pity her, which is why she struggled to keep many friends since her ex-husband left. Despite her fears, however, she still plucks up the courage to go and visit her neighbor after work. Sawatari obviously is very happy to see her and immediately offers her a cup of tea, which makes her a little emotional. The next day, Ochiai is out shopping when someone takes her umbrella by accident. She's too nervous to say anything, even though it was a gift given to her by her mother. As if she summoned him, Sawatari appears out of nowhere, like the knight in shining armor that he is. When she explains what's happened, he offers her his umbrella instead, and before she can refuse, he goes running off to do his shopping. But Ochiai waits for him, and when he gets out, she suggests that they walk home together so that they can share his umbrella. Sawatari must not be the sharpest tool in the shed, because it seems like he didn't even consider that option, and he's very grateful for her consideration. Back at their building, Sawatari suggests they get each other's number so they can keep in contact better. This makes Ochiai very happy, especially since he said she could contact him whenever she wanted. She starts acting like a blushing schoolgirl, even though I'm pretty sure she's older than him and certainly a grown adult. Of course, it wouldn't be Ochiai if some doubts didn't creep in. She quickly becomes nervous that having Sawatari's number will give her an opportunity to be weird over text and end up annoying him. Just as she's beginning to panic, a text from Sawatari-kun pops up, and suddenly, all her worries disappear. The neighbors go on a shopping trip to buy Ochiai a new umbrella, after the drama at the convenience store. Because she doesn't think about much other than romance, Ochiai wonders if their little excursion might be considered a date. Admittedly, it's not too much of a stretch, especially when Sawatari suggests she can try on an outfit and then showers her with compliments once it's on. Not to mention when they stop off at a cafe for a slice of cake. Once they get back, they hang out in Sawatari's apartment, drinking tea and talking about their purchases. While Sawatari is in the bathroom, he gets a package. Of course, Ochiai takes it for him, but when the delivery man assumes she's Sawatari's wife, she goes bright red. When she tries to correct the man, he just assumes that she's a girlfriend, and that makes her so shaky and awkward that she starts blushing like a schoolgirl again. It turns out to be pretty handy that Ochiai is the one to take the package, since it's actually something Sawatari ordered for her. To thank her for always making him dinner, he bought her a spice rack for the two of them to assemble together. It's a sweet gesture, but it reminds Ochiai of her ex-husband again, since he always used to complain that she had too much stuff in the kitchen and was always being a nuisance. Remembering him makes her sad again, so Ochiai takes a moment to rush out of his apartment to cry. The next day, Ochiai is too busy at work to stop by Sawatari's house and make him dinner. You might think that, being a grown man, Sawatari would just fend for himself for once. But apparently, he's more of a man-child than a man, because without Ochiai to cook for him, he ends up at the supermarket buying instant noodles. Ochiai is just happy to see him, and after she gets off work, she offers to cook him a late dinner as thanks. In return, he offers her some more of her favorite tea, which he bought just for her. On their way home, the two lovebirds stop for a moment to look up at the stars. The two of them seem to enjoy life a lot more when the other one is around, so Sawatari offers to walk Ochiai home whenever she gets off work late in the future. She's so touched by the gesture that Ochiai gains some confidence, deciding that when she's with Sawatari, she doesn't have to be so ashamed of herself. When they get back, Ochiai runs straight to his apartment, but before she can get to cooking or even drinking the tea he made for her, she falls asleep. Apparently not bothered about missing out on the meal he was promised, Sawatari gets her a blanket and leaves her to rest. But of course, when Ochiai wakes up and realizes that she's slept over, she is mortified, and only feels worse when she finds him asleep on the floor outside, without a futon or anything. To make it up to him, she makes them both breakfast, and all is forgiven. Breakfast signals the last meal using up the mountain of vegetables that Sawatari's grandma sent him. Since at this point, Ochiai's been pretty much coming over to cook for him every day. She becomes worried that without the extra ingredients, she won't have any excuse to see him anymore. Not like they're friends now or anything. Just in time, Sawatari's sister calls, and announces that she's coming over to visit. Ochiai barely has any time to get nervous about meeting his family, because by the time he's hung up, there's already a knock at the door. Sawatari's sister Yuika arrives, and has brought even more vegetables from their grandma. About 4 boxes worth, actually. Apparently, everyone is worried that with Sawatari's job suspension, he hasn't been eating right. I wonder if any of his family realizes that he can't actually cook. But at least that answers Ochiai's fears about not having an excuse to come over anymore. Yuika is pretty surprised to discover that her brother has company. And not just any company, but a girl, who she says is far too pretty and polite to be hanging out with her brother. Yuika is very friendly, but also really forward, and almost immediately asks Ochiai how far she's gone with Sawatari. You know, a totally normal question that everyone asks their brother. Ochiai tries to explain that they're not really in a relationship, but it becomes pretty obvious that she really wants them to be. Yuika reassures Ochiai that her brother is an idiot, so it's no surprise that he hasn't made a move yet. But she does suggest that if she wants something to happen with Sawatari, she'll need his sister's help. Once Ochiai is back in her own apartment, she gets a message from Yuika, thanking her for cooking them both food and for looking after her brother. Yuika also starts feeding her information about Sawatari, even going so far as to suggest that Ochiai act snuggly and play the older sister type to get close to him, which is beyond creepy, and definitely none of her business. But it gets Ochiai spiraling again, convincing herself that she's not Sawatari's type, and that she'll never have the confidence to start something with him anyway. Meanwhile, Yuika is sticking her nose where it doesn't belong again. She calls up Sawatari and decides to do a little more digging, suggesting that he and Ochiai would make a great couple. Sawatari says she's really nice and a great cook, and that she feels like a big sister looking after him. It's practically music to Yuika's ears, so she texts Ochiai right away, telling her she's already on the right track with her brother. It's a little weird to have a sister setting up her brother with his neighbor, but if it finally gets these two together, then go for it, Yuika. The next day, those two are back to their usual routine, with Sawatari-kun admiring the way Ochiai-san chops onions, of all things. She finally teaches him how to do it for himself, so they can make their first meal together. Ochiai is having fun, just messing around, until she remembers Yuika's words, and suddenly becomes worried that their relationship will fade, or that Sawatari might get snatched up by some other girl while she's busy cooking his meals. So Ochiai plucks up the courage to suggest that they go out for once. Since Sawatari is on at-home suspension, he can't exactly go anywhere nearby. So, they agree to take a little trip together, somewhere his work won't find out. But now Ochiai is panicking about the logistics of this trip, specifically the idea that they might have to spend the night somewhere together. She decides to go shopping for supplies, and with her purchase, she wins a few raffle tickets. Deciding to enter on a whim, she sees that one of the prizes is a weekend hot springs trip. Ochiai thinks that would be the perfect excuse to spend time together in a romantic setting. So, she enters everything she has, and wins a pack of tissues. Not one to give up easy, Ochiai caves and buys the tickets herself, so that when she returns to her flat, she can surprise Sawatari. He seems just as excited as she does about the trip, although he has no clue she just paid for them, since she told him she won the tickets on the raffle. The day of the hot springs trip arrives, and Sawatari is packed up and ready to go. Though when he gets outside, he finds his partner already bleary-eyed and exhausted. At which point, Ochiai admits she was so excited about the trip that she couldn't fall asleep. At least they're in the same boat, since Sawatari admits he was also too excited to sleep. Aww, these two. They're always acting like little kids around each other. The journey to the hot springs involves trains that go through the mountains, with beautiful views and comfy seats. So comfy, in fact, that Ochiai starts getting sleepy with the motion of the carriage. Before she knows what's happening, she is dozed off, right onto Sawatari's shoulder. Lucky for her, her neighbor also fell asleep, so she can hope that he didn't notice her snuggling up to him while she was napping. Once they finally arrive at the hot springs, they end up with a pretty basic room, and decide to head out and explore the local area right away. They take a relaxing stroll, enjoying the natural scenery and surroundings, and stumble upon a path up the hills towards a lookout point. Dressed in a skirt, Ochiai isn't exactly dressed for a climb, so when Sawatari offers her a hand up the steps, she gladly takes it. Although the chance to hold his hand was brief, by the time she gets up to the peak, Ochiai is feeling pretty hot and flustered. They spot a bit of bad weather coming their way from the top of the hills, so they decide to get moving as soon as possible to avoid getting soaked. But because they're in a hurry, Ochiai doesn't look where she's going, and trips over a stone on her way down. Luckily, she's not too badly hurt, but by the time they get down from the lookout point, the rain has arrived, so they have to seek shelter under a bus stop. Not too far from the hotel, Sawatari pulls a smooth move, and decides to carry his neighbor back to safety, putting his hoodie on her to protect Ochiai from the rain. You can just imagine how woozy that makes her feel, both wearing his clothes and then being carried in his arms all the way back to their room. By the time they get back, she's so snuggly in his hoodie that she practically refuses to take it off. Honestly, at this point, I don't know how this guy hasn't guessed her feelings for him already. Obviously, a quick sprint through the pouring rain leaves Sawatari feeling a little chilly, so he decides to head to the hot springs. Too embarrassed to join a public path with other people, Ochiai stays in their room, using the private bath attached to it. Enjoying a long soak in the tub, Ochiai is finally starting to relax when her irrational, insecure brain kicks in, and she starts to feel incredibly guilty for lying to Sawatari and setting this whole trip up so dishonestly. She starts to wonder if she should just come clean about buying the tickets herself, but she isn't sure whether he might end up hating her and thinking she was trying to take advantage of him, which she kind of was, but he doesn't need to know that. Or maybe he does. Either way, her guilt overwhelms her so badly that when Sawatari returns to their room, she is already bowing and immediately admits to the lie. Obviously, Sawatari doesn't hate her, or do any of the things she was worried about. He only feels bad for taking advantage of a trip he thought was free. And when Ochiai admits that she bought the tickets because she wanted to go with him, he's actually pretty flattered. Maybe this will finally knock some sense into the guy and force him to take the hint. Ochiai feels a lot more comfortable now that she's come clean. So next, they go out to buy souvenirs and play some games together. They have a drink, look at the stars, all the things you'd expect to do on a couple's retreat, though somehow Sawatari still isn't getting the message. Before they know it, they're headed back home. But Ochiai's feelings for Sawatari seem to have doubled while they were away together. When he tells her he had a good time in her company, Ochiai practically combusts because she's just so happy. Sawatari reveals that he's finally going back to work next week, so Ochiai sneakily asks him if she can still come around and cook for him once he's back in the office. I don't know why this woman would willingly subject herself to become his live-in maid when she very much has a job of her own, but shameless Sawatari seems totally stoked by the idea. After Sawatari's first day back, Ochiai is true to her word and has dinner all ready for both of them when he returns. But when they sit down to eat, he reveals that his work is sending him over to another company, which means he'll have to move away. Ochiai is totally devastated and immediately runs off crying, even though she tells him he should do whatever he needs to do for his job before she does. Trying to be sensitive, Sawatari sends her a text while she's in her own place crying, asking if she wants to go on a walk. They take a little stroll around the neighborhood, just like they did the first time they met, and it's both sad and nostalgic passing all the places they've made memories together. Ochiai still feels his change in location must have been caused by that suspension, so she feels responsible for affecting his job and his future prospects. She's torn between a feeling that she's having a negative impact on his life and desperately wishing that she could move with him, or at least visit him every now and again. She's about to ask if that would be okay when Sawatari interrupts her and asks himself if she would come with him when he moved. It seems like kind of a huge step for a couple who hasn't even kissed, let alone acknowledge their feelings for one another. But obviously, Ochiai is thrilled and starts packing right away. It's pretty early to be getting ahead of the packing, but Ochiai is so eager that she ends up helping Sawatari pack too, since this full-grown man is literally incapable of doing anything for himself these days. While sorting through her own things, Ochiai stumbles upon the ring from her old marriage. It wasn't so long ago that she couldn't consider getting rid of the ring, even though it carried a lot of bad memories from her divorce. But she's grown a lot since then, largely because of Sawatari. And with a bright new future ahead of them both, she finally feels ready to let go of it. She sells the ring with Sawatari, signaling a fresh new start to their life together. The night before they officially move out, Ochiai and Sawatari decide to eat out, since they've already packed most of their belongings, including any cooking equipment. As always, the kind-hearted Ochiai offers to pay, since Sawatari is going to be the one driving them over to their new apartment tomorrow. They chat over skewers and rice, talking about the excitement of moving to a new region. Sawatari thanks Ochiai for coming with him, saying it would be nowhere near this fun if he didn't have her by his side. The morning of the move arrives. Sawatari's sister Yuika comes over to help with all the boxes and asks the question we've all been wondering about. Are they dating? Sawatari seems confused, so Yuika breaks it down for him. If they've both agreed to live together, they must at least be involved, since no man and woman would agree to move in together unless they were in love. Of course, it makes perfect sense to the rest of us, but this is all news to Sawatari the Slow. Yuika steps away to take a call, leaving her brother to think about what she said. Later, he comes in to check on Ochiai, who is saying goodbye to her old, empty apartment, feeling that she's leaving as a totally different person to the one who first entered it. Obviously, Yuika got through to Sawatari because he raises the question with Ochiai and finally asks if she will go out with him. Ochiai is so happy she can't even stand, so Sawatari has to carry her out to the car, where Yuika waves them off with a smile. The journey to their new home is a long drive away, so the new couple pass time by chatting in the car. Before long, they arrive at a rest area, where they find these delicious beef cutlet sandwiches that Ochiai has been wanting to try. Ochiai starts disassembling the sandwich, and tells Sawatari she could probably make something like it at home. As always, Sawatari is in awe of her skills, and tells her that he really admires her attitude whenever she decides to make something. Ochiai responds by saying she only does it because he gets so happy when she cooks for him, which gets Sawatari all flustered for once. Once they've eaten, they get a bit of a food coma, and decide to take a nap in the car before continuing their journey. Ochiai and Sawatari come off the highway to explore their new neighborhood, before arriving at the building itself. Their new apartment looks pretty much identical to their old ones, but it is at least pretty spacious. They also discover that their walls are thick enough to keep the sound in, and they experiment by yelling to test how soundproof the apartment is. I'm sure that will come in handy later. Once they've got their furniture set up, they decide to take a walk around the block to scope out the new area, hunting for the nearest supermarket and drugstore and all the usual spots. They stop by a store to get supplies for dinner, where Ochiai gets all excited at the different ingredients and options. They decide to be a little adventurous, and it pays off, since the dinner Ochiai makes is even yummier than ever. Yuika calls while they're eating to check they made it to their new place, and also to yell some encouragement about their new relationship, and how Ochiai should be more adventurous in their apartment too. Honestly, this girl never misses a trick. Even when she's in a different city, she still finds a way to embarrass Ochiai. The sun sets and their first night begins, with Ochiai immediately discovering the strangeness of living with Sawatari when she gets into the bath only one wall away from him. Although, as much as she's nervous, she's also pretty happy about their proximity, and even wonders if they could fit two people in the bath. Ochiai goes from 0 to 100 so fast. One moment she's practically combusting because he asked her out, and the next she's casually imagining them getting steamy in the tub together. But Ochiai's bravery doesn't end there. Once they settle down for bed, she musters up the courage to ask if they can sleep a little closer together. It's a tiny step, but with this couple's history, I guess that's more like a leap. After a few days of starting life together in their new home, the ex-neighbors settle into a kind of rhythm. In the morning, Sawatari goes to work, while Ochiai takes out the bins and does the chores. It sounds a little traditional, but the two of them seem happy so far. Deciding she'd like a bicycle to get around the neighborhood, Ochiai visits a secondhand shop to try one out. She finds one in pretty good condition, so she takes it. At first, it seems to be riding perfectly, until suddenly, the chain comes off and she crashes, ruining the bike and coming away with a few bruises herself. Luckily, when Sawatari gets home, he manages to fix it up, finally proving that he's good for something other than just sitting around and waiting to be fed. After dinner the next evening, Ochiai decides they're settled enough that she can start looking for a part-time job. Sawatari suggests she enjoy the time off rather than launching straight back into a job, but Ochiai wants to hold up her end of the partnership, so the next day, she goes searching local notice boards for job opportunities. There are lots of options, but when Sawatari makes a comment that he used to like seeing her in the apron she wore at the supermarket, Ochiai makes her decision. Always thinking with her heart and not her head. At least she's consistent. Barely a few days later, she has a job at a coffee shop, complete with an apron and a cap. Sawatari helps her practice by pretending to be a customer in their apartment, so she makes him some tea, and when she returns, Sawatari has brought her some cake to celebrate her getting the job. A few days into the job, Ochiai seems to be working hard and doing well, even getting compliments from her boss. On her bike ride home, she discovers a tunnel road she didn't notice before. Since she's new to the area, Ochiai is still figuring out the nearby roads in her head, and so, she decides to try out the super sketchy looking tunnel that definitely won't have something evil lurking in it. Luckily, she makes it out unscathed, but does get pretty lost along the way. So lost that she only gets home about the same time as Sawatari. After biking for hours, Ochiai's legs are all wobbly and she struggles to get up the stairs. So of course, Sawatari just has to carry her to the door, bridal style. Maybe this girl is smarter than I thought. Back at work, Ochiai is making friends with her colleagues and finds out one of them has been divorced, just like her. The coworker starts joking that she'll be adjusting her name on the family register again soon, but Ochiai resists, saying that the last time she got swept up and married, it didn't turn out all that well. Which is a bit of an understatement, since we saw last time that her ex-husband left her with some serious insecurities that took a long time to overcome. So it's no surprise that this time she really wants to take things slow and think them through before getting to that stage again. But Ochiai does admit that she's really happy in her current relationship, so she doesn't feel the need to rush anything either. Her colleague is very understanding, since she's been in the same position before. She seems to have a bit of a soft spot for Ochiai, as she draws her up a few suggestions of sightseeing locations for her and Sawatari to visit. When he gets home that evening, Ochiai suggests one in particular, a shrine that's pretty far out of their way, but she's especially keen to go because it's a famous matchmaking spot. Sawatari the blockhead doesn't pick up on the hint, but he seems pretty happy to go along with things as always, so he promises they'll make a visit on their next day off. The next time they get an opportunity is a public holiday, so the shrine is pretty crowded when they arrive. They stop by to pray, but the shrine has lots of little trinkets and food vans to keep them busy, so they end up spending the whole day there, and only get to the train station in the evening. It's rush hour and the station is packed, so Sawatari grabs Ochiai's hand to navigate the crowds, and inside the train, they get shoved pretty close together. Obviously, Ochiai is in heaven, and sends a quick prayer thanking the god of the shrine for such speedy results. Unfortunately, she's so caught up in the moment that she puts them on the wrong bus, and once they get off, they realize it's too late for any other buses to be running. So now, they're stranded on a dark and empty road, with no hope of getting home until the morning and no company except each other. Sounds like a setup if I've ever heard one. They start walking down the road in hopes of finding a passing car or a phone box. Suddenly, Ochiai trips and tumbles into a bush, breaking her shoe and getting herself all scratched up in the process. Looks like it's time for big boyfriend Sawatari to come to the rescue. He gets her on his back and keeps going, while Ochiai begins to panic about her being too heavy for him to carry. It's just at that moment that Sawatari admits he used to want to be a firefighter, so he's used to carrying people around on his back for practice. Apparently, he was really passionate, but ended up flunking the written exam. Because of course he did, why am I not surprised? Sawatari is still keen on the idea of saving people in his job, and wonders if he might be able to pass if he tried again. It might not be easy, but Ochiai encourages him, saying that a job where he saves lives would be perfect for someone like him. Sawatari says he's been thinking about finding a new job anyway, since they might end up needing money in the future. It's only a practical concern, but Ochiai takes it to mean that he really sees a future with her, maybe even with a marriage and kids. While Ochiai is blushing on his back, Sawatari spots the lights of a convenience store up ahead, so he runs them over. They find new shoes for Ochiai and buy some drinks and bandages to keep them going. The cashier tells them a lot of people miss the bus, and suggests they pass the night at a manga cafe just a little ways down the road. It's not exactly close, but after a few more hours of walking, they finally get to the cafe, where they can wash up and rest. After Ochiai gets back from her shower, she finds Sawatari completely passed out on the bed, so she thanks him and quietly confesses that she loves him. And if that wasn't enough, she even gets the courage to give him a little peck on the cheek. Is this the same Ochiai that we first met? She's so much bolder now, especially when she snuggles up to him under the blanket. In the morning, Ochiai finds Sawatari has cuddled around her in his sleep, so obviously she's in paradise from the moment she wakes up. Once her boyfriend gets up, they grab themselves some breakfast and finally catch the right bus, heading back to their town feeling closer than ever. The next day, Ochiai's colleague Karasuma is eager to hear all the details and assumes that their stay at the manga cafe involved a lot more than just cuddling. Ochiai is obviously humiliated and tries desperately to correct a misunderstanding, even though Karasuma is already suggesting a hotel she knows for their next overnight stay. Once they've recovered from their out-of-town adventure, it's back to everyday life. And in a few days, Ochiai gets her first paycheck from her job at the cafe. Enjoying the extra cash, the couple take a trip to a nearby furniture store to get some things for their apartment. Sawatari suggests that they get a cabinet for their kitchen, but Ochiai gets caught on a big queen-size bed. Once she starts imagining the two of them under the sheets, she gets bright red and steamy in the middle of this random furniture shop. The bed is completely over their budget, so there's really no reason to buy it. But Ochiai clearly has a one-track mind, because she pulls out the extra money she got from selling her ring and suggests it to Sawatari. As usual, her boyfriend is completely incapable of taking a hint, and only likes the bed because it's big and says it feels like a trampoline. Stay pure, Sawatari. Always stay pure. They manage to get the bed, but are told that they might have to wait a while for delivery. So, Ochiai's just going to have to get a hold of her urges until then. To justify the new bed, Ochiai told Sawatari that her back and hip were hurting on their old futons, so when they get home, he offers to give her a massage, like the loving boyfriend that he is. Obviously to Sawatari, it's really not a big deal, but Ochiai is pretty tense and excited because, as we know, literally any form of physical contact gets her pretty hot and bothered. She lies down on the futon while Sawatari gets to work, and by the time he's done, she's exhausted and so overwhelmed she has to bury her face in the pillow. For their next day off, the couple decide to head to the beach since it's an especially hot day. Ochiai says she's a little old to be running around in a bathing suit, so they just go for a walk along the shore to cool off. Ochiai gets really into picking up all the pretty seashells lying around and is so concentrated that she doesn't even notice when a big wave comes and gets her totally soaked. It seems like fate and gives her the courage to run into the sea since she's already sopping wet anyway. They end up splashing around in the ocean, soaking up the rays and playing like kids. A few days later, Sawatari suggests a little trip to the convenience store for some after-dinner dessert. They run into Karasuma, who is picking up a little present for her son. Karasuma makes a little joke about them running out of contraception, and Ochiai practically screams that they only came for ice cream before Sawatari hears them. Although, I'm not sure why she's so worried. As much as he's lovable, Sawatari has always been too dense to pick up on her little hints. Karasuma introduces herself to Sawatari, saying that Ochiai is always gushing about what a dependable, family-oriented guy he is. Seems like we've got another Yuika on our hands with how much this girl is teasing them. In the next few days, they get a typhoon warning on the news, and decide to get some extra emergency supplies for when it gets close. Of course, everyone else in their neighborhood seems to have had the same idea, as the hardware store is packed. They take so long fighting through the crowds that the rain has already hit by the time they get back outside, so they run back to their building through the downpour. They have a bath, warm up, and get themselves a hot cup of tea, just before the storm really hits, and there's a sudden blackout. Luckily, they bought a lantern, so they're not left in total darkness, but Ochiai decides the typhoon might have presented her with another opportunity. Alone in the dark with her boyfriend, she sneaks a hand towards him. But before she can get a hold, Sawatari suddenly jumps up and suggests they play cards. Way to kill the mood, buddy. Though once they start playing, Ochiai has fun and gets so carried away that when the lightning strikes nearby, she practically leaps into his arms. So in the end, she got her romantic moment anyway. The next morning, the skies have cleared and the typhoon is passed, and when Ochiai gets back to work, she's invited out for drinks with her colleague Karasuma. Ever the faithful girlfriend, Ochiai makes sure dinner is sorted and asks permission from Sawatari before she heads out. And once she explains this to Karasuma, she remarks on how well their relationship is developing. Karasuma herself is happy to be single, but she admits that when she sees the two of them together, she does get a little jealous. Sawatari even comes to pick up Ochiai once they're done. But since Karasuma is kind of a heavy drinker, she walks back to her apartment to sober up. Only when she gets back to her building, she's lost her key. So, she slumps outside her door with another beer. Jeez, I think this lady might have a problem. While chilling on her doorstep, Karasuma is discovered by a young guy who lives in the room next door, who she calls Taka-kun. When she explains what's happened, Taka-kun invites her inside his apartment, worrying that she'll catch a cold or get in trouble if she stays locked out. Grateful for the offer, Karasuma steps inside and offers him a beer. Looks like we might have another neighborly romance on our hands with these two. Meanwhile, Sawatari has had to carry Ochiai to their front door, where he lays her down very gently on the futon and leaves her to sleep. Little does he know that Ochiai is having some pretty steamy dreams about them sharing their first night together. I would assume that's the beer talking, but then again, Ochiai is pretty eager at the best of times. When she wakes up, she is mortified at her behavior and runs straight to the bathroom to wash up before Sawatari gets up. Of course, because this is Ochiai and nothing ever goes to plan when she's involved, I have a feeling it won't be quite that simple. After washing, she realizes she forgot to bring a change of clothes with her to the bathroom, meaning she has to sneak back into the bedroom, where Sawatari is still asleep in her towel. At first, Ochiai seems surprisingly cool with the idea of being in her towel around her roommate. They are boyfriend and girlfriend after all, so she thinks it surely shouldn't be that big of a deal. That's what she thinks, but when Sawatari's alarm goes off, she panics and decides the only sensible thing to do is to use her towel to cover his face, leaving herself totally exposed and pressed up against him while poor Sawatari is struggling for breath. Seems like a totally reasonable reaction, not absurd or ridiculous at all. After the incident, Ochiai sort of mumbles that she's not really ready for him to see her like that, and asks him to stay put and keep his eyes shut while she changes. Honestly, at this rate, it looks like these two might never even manage a kiss. At work, Ochiai and Karasuma are preparing for the cafe's Halloween event, which involves them dressing up and taking pictures with their customers. Last year, it was Karasuma who dressed up, but she doesn't want to get stuck with that job again, so she suggests that Ochiai do it instead. Of course, the idea of getting dressed up makes her feel pretty stressed out, so Karasuma suggests she hide her face to make her slightly more comfortable. For some reason, the first costume they pull out is a plague doctor one, which, aside from being very tight in the chest area, doesn't seem like it's exactly going to be attracting customers so much as weirding them out. Karasuma says it might not be appropriate for all ages, which is an understatement, so I guess we can conclude that that costume is definitely off the table. Having a slow job gives her a lot of time with her thoughts, and Ochiai begins to wonder the same thing I'm sure every reader has thought up to this point. Why have her and Sawatari been moving so slowly? Given Ochiai's past as someone who went through a painful divorce, it's understandable that she hasn't wanted to rush into anything. But now that the two of them have settled comfortably into their new place, she starts to think it would be nice to kick things up a notch and get a little more flirty with her boyfriend. In fact, Ochiai's starting to become a little desperate to move things along. Her hormones seem to make her particularly keen every now and again, and as Karasuma puts it, she seems to be running out of patience for Sawatari to make the first move. Ochiai admits that she's not really sure how to lay the right hints, although after 40-odd chapters, I think it's pretty clear the poor guy is incapable of picking up any hints, right or wrong. But Karasuma, as a loyal friend, sits down with her to devise some strategies and comes up with something that makes Ochiai a little nervous. But it's also exciting, and as Karasuma points out, they've already taken the biggest step of moving in together. The cards are all on the table. It's just up to her to play them right. So, when Sawatari comes home from work, Ochiai corners him immediately and plucks up the courage to ask him on a date on his next day off, which happens to be tomorrow. Of course, Sawatari is very eager and says yes straight away, asking where she wants to go and what she wants to do. But it's clear that this is all part of Karasuma's plan. So, Ochiai keeps it all a secret, saying only that she already has a schedule planned for the day. Given how their past dates have gone, it's anyone's guess as to whether this will be a success or if it will fall apart in a very embarrassing way. While in the shower, Ochiai starts to go over the plan for the date in her mind. As it turns out, the strategy Karasuma helped her devise is pretty daring after all. The aim is to start off in a theme park for some fun, go to an aquarium after that, and then have some drinks to ease the tension. And then the plan is to get a room together, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense since they literally live together already, but Ochiai has never been the most logical of girlfriends in the first place. According to Ochiai, it was designed to pace things in a way that works best to create some romance. They start with simple, uncomplicated fun, something that Sawatari would like, then they spend some time in a private environment, and then they use the power of alcohol to get the mood going. When Sawatari asks if they should reserve a hotel room for their overnight date, Ochiai admits that she's already done it. Instead of being suspicious, her lovable, slightly dense boyfriend is impressed, saying that she's always so organized and on top of everything. How little he knows. Apparently, Karasuma stressed that they need to stay in an adult hotel, the kind that don't really take reservations, if you know what I'm getting at. According to her, it's important to demonstrate that Ochiai is a mature woman, and to take action rather than sit around waiting for him to get the message. And while the second part of that might be true, I can only imagine renting out an adult hotel is going to backfire in some way. Maybe Ochiai thinks the same, as she's so worried during the night before that she hardly sleeps a wink. Once they're up and out of the door though, her worries vanish, and she becomes more determined than a soldier stepping out onto the battlefield. Their first stop is the theme park, which is both a resort and a seaside utopia, as well as a fun fair. They go on lots of terrifying rides, and even though Ochiai doesn't seem to be particularly enjoying them, she insists that they try all the scariest ones. It seems her tactic is to engage the suspension bridge effect, a phenomenon in which an unsafe environment encourages people to confuse their feelings of fear for romantic attraction. Supposedly, attractions which make you scream have especially strong results, so Ochiai's decided to test that theory here and now. Though it seems like it might be having more of an effect on her than him, since they come off most of the rides to find her head spinning and seems to be clinging very tightly to Sawatari-kun. Sawatari notices the difference and suggests they ride the Ferris wheel for a break. His plan is probably to calm her down, but it seems to do the opposite, trapped together in a small, enclosed space sitting right next to each other. Ochiai becomes overwhelmed by her feelings and finds it difficult to hold back. She starts to wonder if now is the time to make her move, and if it would be alright to kiss him since they have already been dating for months. She musters up the courage and is about to give it a go when Sawatari cuts her off, pointing at the little kids waving in the pod next to them. Talk about timing. Those kids have no idea what they just interrupted. But the date has only just begun, and Ochiai is still feeling confident that the plan will work out the way she wants it to. Next stop is the aquarium, conveniently placed beside the theme park and on the way to the hotel rooms. The purpose of the aquarium is supposedly to provide a contrast to the theme park, where the atmosphere is subdued, quiet, and dark. Apparently because this will suddenly remind Sawatari of his company and the person he's with. At least that's the theory. After jumping the gun on the Ferris wheel, Ochiai is determined to set the mood right this time. Should be easy, since the aquarium is dark and pretty empty, and maybe that's what gives Ochiai the strength to ask if they can hold hands. Sawatari says yes straight away, and their interlocked fingers makes Ochiai all hot and flustered. Although, honestly, what doesn't make Ochiai all hot and flustered? Trying to keep control of her hormones, Ochiai tries to avoid looking at Sawatari because she doesn't trust herself to stay restrained. But, as you might expect, not making eye contact or looking his way kind of ruins the mood between them, so then she gets even more embarrassed and asks him not to pay her any attention. Nice one, Ochiai. Such a smooth plan. And yet, she's botched every stage so far. Finally, they enter the bar and sit down for a drink, an activity that surely even she can't mess up. Ochiai orders herself a mojito, trying to ignore the slight feeling of disappointment about how their date has gone so far. Although they did hold hands, she feels awkward since these kind of strategies make her uncomfortable and kind of ruin the atmosphere for both her and Sawatari. The idea of having to tell Karasuma that all her hard work went to waste makes Ochiai even more upset. So she downs her cocktail all in one go, a move that definitely won't screw things up even further. By the third glass, Ochiai is almost wasted and can barely see, let alone speak. Add to this the fact that she hardly slept the night before, and it seems like the ultimate anti-romance combo. But since she ordered the drink already, Ochiai tries to make herself finish it so as not to be wasteful. Luckily, her boyfriend seems to have picked up on her nervousness, and suggests that they go for a walk along the seaside after they're done at the bar. It sounds romantic, to walk beneath the stars together, but it also serves the dual purpose of sobering Ochiai up before they get back to their room. Maybe Sawatari isn't as thick-headed as he seems. It's not in the strategy, but Ochiai agrees anyway, and offers the rest of her drink to Sawatari, so that she doesn't literally pass out at the table. Once they're outside and on their walk, Ochiai is far more relaxed, which makes her realize that maybe she's more the type to relax and take things easy than to plan every move. Maybe the fresh air makes her feel more comfortable, because Ochiai quickly confesses to her schemes under the moonlight, telling Sawatari she just wanted to do some more romantic stuff, so she concocted all these plans that ended up making her look like a fool. It seems even Sawatari wasn't dense enough not to have noticed, and laughs, saying he was wondering why she had been acting so different from her usual self. After a full day of humiliation and mojitos, Ochiai quickly finds herself exhausted. So, Sawatari offers to carry her to her room. Maybe he has picked up on one or two hints after all. Ochiai agrees to let him carry her for a bit, although she isn't expecting it when he picks her up and straddles her across his waist, rather than carrying her bridal style. Sawatari even admits that's the kind of carrying a parent does when they want their toddlers to go to sleep, which doesn't exactly scream romance. But Ochiai is so tired she doesn't care, and clearly is just happy to be in his arms at the end of the day. She decides to be content with this kind of romance, not the ones you read about in books or see in movies, but the impromptu kind that happens naturally and just feels right. Before she met Sawatari, Ochiai was in pieces, and didn't know if she could ever offer her broken heart up to someone, or trust anyone again. But now, she feels comfortable, and so happy that she wants to be honest about her feelings and admit the truth at last. Leaning off his shoulder, she scrapes up the courage to say that she loves him, and even goes one step farther to lean in for a kiss. Somewhere far away, Karasuma is punching the air. All that careful planning worked out after all. We suddenly cut to a car, where Ochiai appears to be having some very saucy dreams about her and Sawatari together. When she wakes up, she is shocked to find Sawatari beside her in the driver's seat, looking haggard and exhausted. After Ochiai's confession, it seems she ran out of steam and fell asleep on his shoulder. Poor Sawatari didn't know what hotel she'd booked, so he just put them up in the car, not wanting to wake her. I mean, I know this guy is a gentleman, but what a letdown. Ochiai apologizes, but her boyfriend doesn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he tells her he loves her too, since he didn't get to say it back before she fell asleep that night. Ochiai nearly has a stroke trying to piece together the memories from last night, but realizes she did just about manage to confess to and kiss him, so her date was a victory after all. Overcome with happiness, she spends a few minutes just giggling and blushing, proud of herself for the progress they've made as the sun rises in the distance. Once they've returned from their excursion, Ochiai is more than excited to spill the beans with Karasuma and admit the strategy was a success. As soon as they're back at work, she tells her they kissed, and her colleague admits she even seems different. She says there is no longer so much as a speck of the sad, lonely divorcee left in her. Now she just seems confident and happy. Karasuma is glad and congratulates her on finding happiness. She starts to hint that she herself might have had some fun too, potentially suggesting that her night staying over at Takanashi-kun's led to more than just a friendship. It seems like neighborly romances are popping up all over the place now. But before Karasuma can explain, Ochiai's phone rings. She picks up and very suddenly has to leave, racing home on her bike to oversee a delivery at their apartment. And what delivery could possibly have prompted so much excitement that she would leave her job in the middle of the day? Oh, the delivery of the fated bed, of course. If you don't remember, Ochiai used the money from her old wedding ring to purchase a new queen-sized bed for their new apartment in the last part, and has been waiting up until now for it to be delivered. When Karasuma heard what she did, she suggested their apartment was going to turn into a love hotel, which doesn't seem so far from the truth by the time Ochiai's got it all set up and is dreaming about her first night sharing a bed with Sawatari. When her boyfriend comes home, she's eager to show him the result of her hard work, but brings him first to the dinner table for some food. Apparently, she made their dinner with Sawatari in mind, trying to feed him lots of meat to keep up his stamina. I'll leave you to interpret that in whatever way you want. The next day, things seem perfectly normal, with Sawatari heading off to work and Ochiai taking out the bins and doing the chores as normal before her shift in the afternoon. Spotting a stray cat on the sidewalk, Ochiai crawls over to confess the delivery of the bed, and to tell this random pet that she spent all night sleeping hand in hand with her boyfriend. While the cat doesn't seem to care, it's a pretty big deal for her, and a huge step in their relationship. They only just started holding hands, and now they're doing it in bed together. This is the fastest they've ever progressed. Before rushing out that morning, Sawatari asks if tonight they can drive a little way out of the city to see a meteor shower that was mentioned on the news. That evening, they make the trip, finding a nice isolated spot under the stars, which reminds Ochiai of all those months ago, when they used to stargaze while walking home from work, when Ochiai was still doing shifts at the supermarket and Sawatari was still on suspension. They reminisce fondly on how much has happened since those days, and how far away it feels from the life they live now, together as partners. Ochiai thanks Sawatari for bringing her back to her old self, and says that every day since she has met him has been fun. Sawatari is silent and asks if anything is wrong. That's when he admits he's trying to think of a good wish for when the meteors appear. Because, of course he is. The shower starts and Ochiai makes her wish too, telling Sawatari that she wished they could keep happily living together. Sawatari starts laughing, and she gets a little offended until he admits it's only because he wished for the exact same thing. While they look up at the sky, Ochiai reflects on how incredibly grateful she is to have him in her life, and for the gentle, comfortable kind of love they share. After a few minutes stargazing, she suggests they head back to the car, at which point he stops her and says there's something he has to ask her first. I'll give you 10 points if you can guess what it is. Flash forward to a month later, and Ochiai is at work with Karasuma, showing off her ring and discussing the run-up to their wedding, saying that they need to visit their families to announce the engagement first. At home after work, their life looks the same as always. Ochiai has cooked for Sawatari, trying to use up all the vegetables his grandma continues to send him. They get to talking about families, suggesting that they go visit during the New Year's holiday to announce the news and get to know each other's families. As if things couldn't get any cuter, it starts to snow outside, so Sawatari suggests they sneak out and build a snowman together. It seems like they'll continue their innocent love forever, enjoying each other's company and living happily ever after. And it's a good thing too, because it took them long enough just to get that far. Thank you for watching My Divorced Crybaby Neighbor. If you enjoyed this series, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe to our channel for more content.